What you're looking at is a crime scene. In the late 1800s, a company was formed with one specific goal: to systematically loot the ruins of a lost empire. They stole over 2,000 ounces of gold. But the real theft wasn't the metal. It was the story.
Thank you for watching African Elements. In case we haven't met, I'm the digital avatar of Professor Darius. While he's busy in the classroom, I've stepped in to bring the material to you. So, let's jump in. For over 100 years, Westerners looked at these massive stone towers and told the world a lie. They claimed this city wasn't built by Africans. They called it the Ghost of King Solomon, or a Phoenician colony. They used a weaponized form of knowledge to erase the skill of an entire civilization while they stripped the walls bare. Today, we're going to look at the receipts. We're going to see how the ancient ruins company destroyed history for profit and how modern science finally caught them in the act. In 1871, a German explorer named Karl Mauch discovered Great Zimbabwe. Now, discovered is a generous word. Local Shona people had been living around it for centuries. But when Mauch stood before the great enclosure, a wall 36 feet high and 800 feet long, he had a mental breakdown. He couldn't reconcile what he saw with what he believed. At the time, Victorian ideology held that Africa was a dark continent, a place of savage stagnation. Mauch wrote in his journal that these ruins were too sophisticated to be built by Negroes. Instead, he claimed he found the biblical land of Ophir.
This was never built by the Shona.
He literally smelled a piece of cedar wood and claimed it was from Lebanon. This wasn't just a mistake, it was an invention. This is what philosopher V.Y. Madimbe calls gnosis. It's a biased structure of knowledge. The Western world didn't look at Africa to learn. They looked at Africa to confirm what they already thought. Because their gnosis told them Africans were primitive, the stones had to be the work of a higher race. This fiction allowed them to treat the site not as a cultural treasure, but as a resource to be mined. If it wasn't African history, then Africans had no right to the gold hidden inside. This lie was backed up by the maps of the era. Cartographers like those in the Royal Geographical Society were busy effacing local subject positions. They created maps that showed Africa as an empty space, waiting for Western science to fill it. Mapmakers would often rely on best authorities, who were usually just other biased explorers, to repeat myths as fact. By labeling the area around Great Zimbabwe as a monument of a lost white race, they effectively cleared the history of the land, making it psychologically easier for the British South Africa Company to move in. Hey folks, this is Professor Darius reminding you to like, comment, share, and subscribe to see more of this content. Or join the history makers in our Patreon community and gain early access to ad-free videos and exclusive content for as little as $1 a month at patreon.com/African Elements. Enter the villains of our story, the Ancient Ruins Company Limited. In 1895, this company was granted a formal license by the colonial government to prospect all the ruins in the region. They didn't want the history. They wanted the burial gold. Led by men like W.G. Neal and George Johnson, they treated Great Zimbabwe like a giant piggy bank. They systematically dug through the occupation layers, the very dirt that tells us how people lived, what they ate, and how they traded. To these looters, that dirt was just overburden. They threw it away, destroying the stratigraphy and the evidence of African skill forever. They were incredibly successful. In just a few years, they took 14 kilograms of gold ornaments from just one site. Another prospector, Burnham, took 17 kilograms. In total, they stripped over 2,000 ounces of gold from these sacred sites. They were essentially melting down the crown jewels of a civilization to turn them into bullion, and the whole time, they kept the lie alive. They argued that because they found gold standardized into specific weights, it had to be the work of ancient Phoenicians or Arabs. They couldn't imagine a sophisticated African economy. But they missed something. They missed the technical ceramics. Recent research by Jasmine Vieri and her team has uncovered 117 gold processing vessels right on site. Using X-ray fluorescence and scanning electron microscopy, scientists found that these weren't just random pots. They were crucibles used in a highly advanced metallurgical process. The residents of Great Zimbabwe weren't just lucky to find gold, they were master engineers. The evidence proves that the residents relied on a sophisticated, standardized economy centuries before Westerners arrived. They produced gold ingots that weighed exactly 327 grams. This wasn't a primitive barter system. This was a global trade network. Great Zimbabwe was the heart of Aguta, a city, that exported gold to the Swahili coast, where it then traveled to India, China, and Europe. The gold in the crowns of European kings may well have started its journey in an African furnace.
For decades, the truth about Great Zimbabwe was buried under political censorship, but the stones eventually spoke. Modern carbon dating and stratigraphic analysis proved what the looters tried to erase. This city was built by the Shona people, peaking between the 11th and 15th centuries. It wasn't a copy of anything. It was a unique, homegrown masterpiece of engineering.
My new book, Africa Reclaimed, Overcoming the Legacies of the Colonial Machine, moves from being the subjects of someone else's story to reclaiming our own as its core mission. Here we look at how Africa today has been shaped by European colonization, and how Africa might break free from the colonial legacy to move forward on its own terms.
It's time to reclaim our narrative. Click the link in the description to pick up your copy of Africa Reclaimed today. Available in paperback and ebook on Amazon and the Google Play bookstore.
Why does this matter? Because the fiction of the ghost was used to justify the theft of the present. By claiming Africans didn't build the past, colonial powers argued they couldn't build the future. This racism was baked into schoolbooks for decades. Students were taught that natives were like children, incapable of change. This wasn't just about hurt feelings, it was about institutionalized darkness. The ghost was a convenient excuse to ignore the complex political institutions and the military power of states like the Asante or the Ethiopian Empire, which were actually defeating European armies at the time. The ghost of Great Zimbabwe isn't a person, it's the memory of a civilization that was intentionally buried under a mountain of gold-hungry lies. The stones didn't need King Solomon to be magnificent. They were already perfect. The story of Great Zimbabwe is a reminder that history is often written by the winners to justify the loot. But science has a way of digging up the truth. The Ancient Ruins Company may have melted the gold, but they couldn't melt the skill recorded in the stone. We are finally seeing the real Africa, not as a dark continent, but as a crucible of innovation. If you found this remarkable, hit the like button. It helps the discovery algorithm find people who need to hear this story. Once again, I'd like to send a huge shout out to the history makers in our Patreon community. You can join them for as little as $1 a month and gain early access to ad-free videos by clicking the link below. And if you want to know about another deleted piece of history that explains why our world looks the way it does, click this video right here. I'm Professor Darius. Thank you for watching African Elements.